Hello from New Zealand. Richard Miller, never not here. And we're having really, really full days. Like, you know, you might even say we have our own stuff coming down and we have a lot of organization to do, and sometimes we overbook and and then we're making deadlines, even though we think we're on vacation and just totally taking it easy. And so one of the things we like to do, one of the stops, New Zealand, Australia, wherever we are, we like to go on a certain forum. And part of that forum is just posting and reading and interacting and knowing people. And Rena knows more than I. She's been on it for some years. I started, the first day was the first Monday in the year. I was on a Skype call. Not everybody does the Skype calls, but anyhow, we're talking about community. And here we are having a community that we participate in. And you know, it's these people that we're meeting on the Eckhart Tolle Forum. So we're with two of these people today, and so then help me welcome Grace Lambert. Hi, Grace.
Hi, Richard.
Thanks a lot for joining us in our experiment of more than typing, posting.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So we'll see what we get into here, and then our other guest, please help us welcome Tom Galten. So, hi, Tom.
Hey, Richard. Hi, Grace.
Hi, Tom.
I know this is probably new for you. It's sometimes new to me to get two people on at once, and wondering, well, what's going to happen here? And I don't know, I talked with Tom. We talked a little bit, and we kind of got to know each other. You know, what I like to say is just like to try to really start basic and just say, well, you know, some things are so obvious you don't really have to have any training. And you know, what's obvious is like, we want a good life. We want a good life, right? I mean, it's not really brain surgery or anything like that. And we want to figure out the good parts of life and emphasize them. And we want to do it in many different ways, you know. We pick up wisdom from other people, or, you know, we just imitate what the rest of society is doing. And see where it gets us. And I guess that's the experiment of being born, right? And it's not really a spiritual search, is it, Tom? I mean, it's just a life. It's just a life living life.
Well, yeah, I mean, living life, spiritual search. I guess, you know, it kind of comes down to, I don't know, I mean, defining the terms, I guess. I mean, what do you mean by spiritual search?
What would you mean by it? I mean, joining a forum, Eckhart Tolle Forum, maybe would be something.
Spiritual search. Well, I mean, you could say, at least the way I would suggest it, spiritual search is the self's, ultimately it's a self-search for itself, really. The self's search by and through human body-mind organisms, ultimately for itself. What else is there to find?
Yeah. Well, in one way you could say, like, okay, spiritual search. Spiritual just means like it's not always obvious, right? Because there's an obvious part of our life. It's just that we're going to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? Right. That's pretty obvious, right? And then we say, well, okay, well, we have an attitude about that. And then that's not so obvious where that came from. And then how much that attitude shapes us. You know, well, it does shape our happiness or our unease, right? Because like we think, I love this job, you know, and then we're really happy singing along in the car saying, I'm gonna get that project and I'm gonna finish it today, or I'm gonna get one step closer, you know, or otherwise our attitudes are shaped in another way, like, oh boy, this is not all that creative, you know, I'm just filling a slot here. And so then spiritual to me means like what's underlying life, right? And could that be said like that?
Well, I'll just say one more thing, and then, you know, probably let Grace suggest what she's thinking too on this. I would say that you can live life without being in a conscious spiritual search. I mean, really, I suppose even the majority of people aren't in a conscious spiritual search. I mean, the self, which is the ground of everyone, isn't actively searching or actively awakening in every human being. What does Eckhart say? He's suggesting that probably about in 10% of all, what did he say, all in regard to the population of North America? Or did he say now it's increased possibly up to more around 15 or 20%, in whom the self is actively searching for itself, in other words, in the process of awakening. So, I mean, living your life is one thing, a spiritual search is another. You can, everyone who is in a spiritual search presumably is living his or her life, but you can live your life without being in a spiritual search. I think we should distinguish between those two things.
Well, let's hear what Grace says about that, and then
It seems to me that self is always searching for itself but doesn't realize it. And with the realization that you're seeking something, you don't necessarily know what it is. There's a lot of, in my experience, there was a lot of anxiety. And
is that because you don't know what it is?
Yeah, I think so, but I couldn't say for sure. For me, it was, there must be something else, something more, something different. Dissatisfaction with who I thought I was and how my life was and all the people dissatisfaction all the way around drove me to search for something more, and I didn't really know what that was. But it started very young, and I'm not dissatisfied anymore. So, but that doesn't mean the seeking doesn't arise still occasionally.
Yeah. When you think about it, you know, dissatisfaction is something that our culture plays on, and somehow we're believing that nobody's really telling us about what's the root of dissatisfaction, or like. And even talking about managing it, and we're always leaving that to be the outside and using that as like the carrot and the stick kind of thing, like outside is going to draw us, you know, either push us or draw us, and that dissatisfaction is an important tool to exceed in life and exceed in school and exceed in business, and but yet, you know, we're told that. So then you're saying that some kind of a dissatisfaction was driving you. In a way, you're giving it an honor. You're saying that somehow through that dissatisfaction you were motivated. And I'm saying, well, I don't know, that's like something that people are doing to us, right? And they're not trying to pull us out of that. They're saying, hey, go for it, you know, be dissatisfied.
And then offering false substitutes.
Yeah, they're offering well, you know, we think they're real for a while, and probably they think, the ones that are offering it probably think they're real too, if they believe in that paradigm that suffering drives you forward.
I might make a distinction between the dissatisfaction that you just described and the dissatisfaction of the spiritual search that drives the spiritual search. I'm not sure how I would do that, though. But
in other words, it's like you have a sneaking notion that they might be a little different, right? Maybe we can explore it, you know, we can explore it together and see. See if we can come to anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know what you're saying, and I don't know if it's a difference in kind, Richard and Grace. I think it's probably a difference in degree. Maybe everybody has kind of a low-level, generic kind of dissatisfaction. Maybe it's not conscious. But I think it probably puts us all at risk for becoming compulsive in one way or another. I mean, we could call that the human condition.
Yeah, the human condition. In other words, we're imitating that level of angst that is all around us, right? And we don't have a ground floor below that level, because that's kind of like where we entered the womb, and there was whatever that level of our mother's angst was, that's like total relax for us.
But then I think that also what Grace is suggesting is that, if I'm understanding you right, Grace, you're talking also about another level, maybe a more acute level of dissatisfaction that sort of goes beyond, you know, your ordinary, everyday kind of chronic dissatisfaction that we can call the human condition. Maybe we can say that some of us have suffered from a more acute human condition. It's more urgent. Maybe some of us have fallen into very serious compulsion or addiction of one form or another. And that maybe is that distinction you were talking about, Grace, between being, you know, a conscious seeker and somebody in whom the self is maybe less consciously seeking.
I know. Tell me, you know, what comes to me is like, is in a way that's relative, right? Because we can read a story or something, but we can only feel our own anxiety, and so then maybe we have a little bit of suffering that's terrible to us. We don't accept it, you know. And somebody else has a whole lot of suffering, and they say, "Oh well, what the heck." You know, I'm over that. I'm over the hill on that one, you know. Whoa, that's great, you know. And so then really, to say you had a lot of suffering, I don't even know if you can say that makes it, you know, we can excuse it as a collective. We can say, well, that's a lot more than I wanted, so they must have the rights to be unhappy, right?
Suffering is relative?
Yeah, I think it's relative, right? Because it's relative to how we accept our own suffering. It's not necessarily, how can you have a benchmark, really? I mean, you don't really feel it and stuff. You can resonate with it, but right. You know, here's what I wanted to say. Okay, I'll just say what I thought to say, you know, because, okay, if I want to be a millionaire and I'm not a millionaire and never was a millionaire, you know, and I get to feel an anxiety about that and say, oh God, I really want it. But it's not really, there's not, you know, that's one level of dissatisfaction, let's call it. Now, you're saying, what if I had some kind of really clear spaces, even as an infant, as a child, that I even remember, you know? And then in what we would say in the spiritual world is like, I actually had awakenings and openings all through childhood, you know? And so I know that space. And so when I'm out of it, I know that I'm missing it. And now that's a different kind of, like, that's a yearning that's for going home, for knowing, for where I've already been. That posits that I had been there, you know, but I mean, that's different than just a dissatisfaction, a mental dissatisfaction, or like a kind of like trying to copy society's ideas of what's great.
Yes, and I'm not so sure if I'm maybe going in a different direction here or not, Richard, but when you were talking, it occurred to me that there's always been kind of a perplexing question for me when it comes to suffering, And Grace, you referred to that as anxiety, and I'm going to say that probably what you guys are talking about is essentially the same thing. And this is my question. It's kind of along the lines of the classic, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because like you said, this search in you started at a very early age, Grace. And Eckhart has talked about, and here's where I think something that you said, Richard, kind of triggered something in me. Eckhart has talked about suffering as being a potential opening, or opening to the self, or an opening between the conscious and the deep self, or what we commonly call the ego, and examining its connection with the deep self and that sort of thing.
I like that you said potential, because I don't want it to be the only one, but anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But what comes first? I mean, I have an inclination to say that if you're suffering, then that is an indication that the self has already started to awaken, and that in and of itself, that suffering is the resistance at the conscious level to the self's attempt to kind of come up from the depths and connect itself up with the conscious. And the ego just resists that, resists the will of the self in that regard. And the result or the outcome of that resistance is suffering and anxiety.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I like that suffering is resistance, but what is the resistance? If you just say ego resists, and that's the characteristic of ego, my thinking is there's no ego and there's no characteristics of ego. And so then I want to go deeper than just to say that. A lot of people say, well, ego will never give up, And I say, well, wait a minute, there is no ego, so there's nothing to not give up.
Right, yeah.
What about that?
Ego is the assumption that ego exists, you could say.
Right.
Ego exists to the extent that I believe it's there. An illusion can be highly convincing.
Yeah.
Obviously.
What's your take on suffering, Grace? What's your take on suffering?
I'll just make it a little bit personal. That I had a lot of mental anxiety. It's just from the time I was young, I would stress out about things, and so to compare that to somebody who had some physical disability, say, which is a form of suffering, for me now, it's easier to sort of say, well, I understand that I created my own suffering by the thoughts that I entertained and believed in. And it's really clear to me that I created my own suffering by the thoughts that I had and that I believed in. And I still see that process in action now.
So somehow the suffering part was the interpretive part. In other words, the part that whatever is real here, that was just real, but how you took it.
Absolute identification with what I thought and believed to be true, and took into my cellular being. So, yeah, that's how it feels to me now.
There's another whole big question that we can ask that's very similar to what is suffering and how is suffering different than pain. And we can ask, what is effort and what is effortlessness? Because that has to do with resistance too, I think. I don't know. What do you think about what in your life is effort?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. seeking felt like effort. It felt like the greatest effort I ever put out. And the process of seeking brought more and more anxiety. And it wasn't until I really found Eckhart Tolle and listened to him over and over and over again, and went to see him speak, and really started to let go of the identification with the thought that I had to attain some future state. I had to become like Eckhart. I had to either, become enlightened or have this experience that would say, okay, you've made it. And I let all that go, and all the suffering disappears.
Oh, yeah, right. So could you be tempted? I mean, maybe I could tell you,
yes.
Look, this is the way. You really could find something great here, Come on,
Absolutely.
Grace, come on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so then you've got a rule. You've got a rule that says, "Oh no, not that again. I'm not going to think about those things." Right? You work on a rule, right?
No. For me, I don't have a rule. I just go, "Wow, there it is."
Well, that's a great way to do it if you're just recognizing and you say, "I'm already here." I am here, not already. I'm just here, right? And then.
Yeah.
That's a self-perpetuating cycle, though, isn't it? I mean, just like what you said a minute or two ago, Grace, you said, I was causing my own suffering. And I've started to question, and I know that I do this a lot on the Tolle website, and I do it with myself too. I will ask, well, who is causing who? What suffering?
Yeah.
Until you realize that there is only one, there's not two. Like Eckhart in his talks will sometimes refer back to his story. When he came to the moment of truth, when he said, I can't live with myself anymore. And it came to him as clear as day at that point, and he asked himself, what do I mean when I say I can't live with myself anymore? Is there two of me, or is there one of me? And at that point, there was a coming together. There was that overcoming of that division and a unification of the seeking self with the self in, the seeking self with the formless, you could say, to use Eckhart's language. And
you would say that the seeking self fell away.
Yeah, the seeking self, came to realize that it was what it was seeking. The seeking self realized that it was its own goal. It was seeking itself all along.
Right.
And, well, I mean, when that happens, what more do you need in regard to effort or anything else?
Okay, now that's beautiful. Now I'm going to throw a ringer in there. Like when that doesn't happen, you don't really see it. You've heard it a million times, of course. Then what more do you need?
You don't actually need anything.
But you think you do, right?
Yeah, the self thinks it needs more. If no ego, like,
should we give it to the self, or should we just say, look at self, we're putting you on a starvation diet? Because we know better, right? Eckhart told us so.
Well, it's kind of what, I mean, you said this a few minutes ago, Richard. You said there is no ego. That means there is no little s self. There is no Tom. There's no Richard. There's no Grace.
There's a lot of thoughts about it. But, you know, to really find the substance of it is more difficult, right? We can find all the thoughts. We can have a dictionary of Richard Miller.
Yeah,
But anyhow.
well, it's more than thoughts. It's a deeply conditioned unconscious assumption. But who has that assumption?
Yeah, but that's not enough, right? Because I can say, who has that assumption, you know, and then logically I say, yeah, right, who has it? But anyhow, I still feel hurts, and I still feel moody, and I still feel like I hate my job, and I still feel like, oh, why is everyone arguing with me anyhow? And I can't even not argue with them either. I'm deficient too. And we still feel all those things, and then we think, well, how can I settle my life into this, you know? How can I just say, okay, now I'm arrived, I'll go another 20 years like just with these attitudes, you know? And you think, oh no, I need to, why can't I live easy? You know, somebody must be giving a testimony that they're living easy, you know? Let me do it too.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you rightly put it, it's all illusion, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, same thing, you know, like that doesn't help. I've said that I've said that for years, right? And then I still feel the same. In fact, it's worse because now I don't work. I can't even get a job now because I don't like it. And a job is an illusion, so I don't want to do it, right? So now I'm like out of society in a way, like I'm out of the financial, you know, my income and my outgo doesn't equal. And so that's more or less comfortable, right? And then, I don't know. So I just say my income and my bank balance is an illusion. And how does that make me more able to deal with society?
Well, when you're asking those questions, I think you're asking those questions from out of the dream of illusion, or out of the dream of separation. I think that's Adyashanti's terminology. You're asking those questions from out of the dream of separation itself. And to think that there's some answers that are going to satisfy you at that level is itself illusion.
They will. You know, I mean, a lot of people are spiritual, you know, teachers even, and they live a dream life, you know. They live in the mansion and in the countryside. We've seen them. We've been in some real great estates, you know, and then, I don't know, everyone around them loves them, and they cook good food. They go to the doctor when they need it. What else do they want? I don't know. I think that they don't really entertain anxiety anymore because they don't see it. They're not interested, really.
Right.
I'm not interested in anxiety. I know it doesn't get me anywhere. Mm-hmm. It gets me down a hole. Mm-hmm. And so then, why shouldn't I have that same? Why shouldn't I have that same possibility in my life? Illusion or no illusion?
Well, you will if you suffer long enough and you finally get to the point where you collapse.
Well, that could be called death, you know.
Richard?
Yes?
I think you said something really interesting right there, and that is interest. They don't have any interest in suffering anymore. Anxiety, well, I forget what you said.
Yeah,
but
both.
They don't have any interest. And when you don't put your attention on the anxiety or the thoughts that you should be doing something else, or you should attain some other state, or you should have a different job, when you don't put your attention on that, what is there? Is there suffering?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's suffering, number one, and number two, I think there's all kinds of options, you know. Lots of stuff comes on the screen, and you can just start choosing. You know, all you got to do is start saying yes, a little bit of yes, and then next time you say a little bit more of yes, and something like that happens, right?
Appears to.
Yeah. Well, that's happening for you, right? Because you said, okay.
I mean, if you know people who are living in a mansion who themselves feel no further desire, I would suggest very strongly that it's not because they're living in a mansion that they no longer feel desire. It's because they have found the stream of living water which flows from within, to use that New Testament biblical imagery. Eckhart has said many times that he knows plenty of famous and wealthy people who are unhappy.
Yeah, okay, well, he's a famous and wealthy person, and he's happy, right? Even though he's not spending the money. Apparently, he's got a big bank account, right? But they tell Eckhart, because they say that he's not really living in an ostentatious house, but I mean, he's selling millions of books, so even if he got $1 a book,
Right. At the same time, poverty is not required for enlightenment. So is there correlation between poverty, financial poverty, living in poverty, and enlightenment? I wouldn't go out on a limb and say that. Maybe Eckhart knows lots of very wealthy people, in the traditional, conventional sense of that term, who are enlightened, but they're not enlightened, or they're not desireless because they've gotten everything that the world can give.
No, that's not the point I was trying to make. I was trying to, because you were saying, well, that's all an illusion. I was saying, well, I want my illusion to be nice,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even as I lighten my load of my interpretive load, let's say, even if I stop blaming people, stop blaming myself, stop feeling guilty, stop feeling shameful, I still wanted to touch ground somewhere. Why shouldn't I touch ground and let me experience the beauty of civilized living, and also let me interact with my fellow man and make them feel happier than they were when I met them.
Mm-hmm.
They just release, right? And let all those things happen. In other words, let spirituality, like Adyashanti, mentioned him, he always says rubber hits the road, right? And where do you get traction with this spirituality? Where does it really touch your life, Does it just kind of like freeze you out and boom, I'm happy? When I meditate, that is. But when I go out into the real world, oh boy, it's tough out there. In fact, I stopped going. I quit my job. That's a lot of people are hung up like that. What do they? Is that a thing that you want to be a spiritual teacher and coach people to kind of go into a closet?
I would make a distinction between happiness and joy, and the peace that is available within. And you don't have to be happy to be filled with joy. You can be grieving for a loss and be filled with joy. At least in my experience, that's the paradox of it. To the mind, it's like, I don't get this. Mm-hmm. There's this tremendous peace that surrounds everything that I don't get it. But okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I like to put words to things, I think it's valuable. But, temporary too, because okay, tomorrow I'll change them. But then I'd say, okay, there's a piece around everything, and then make something out of that.
Well,
but
the other thing that came to mind for me, Richard, when you were speaking, is that I think that a lot of us, we probably started off on a spiritual search thinking that it was going to make us happy, that it was just another something or another that we could add to ourselves in some way, or make us feel good, and kind of like a drug or alcohol can temporarily make you feel good. Well, if you look at spirituality in the same light, you're going to want that. You're going to want that. But the essence of what I think that Grace is talking about, that joy, is desirelessness, not wanting anymore. So I think that until one comes to realize that there's nothing to get, that it's right here, right now, and always has been, that reverses the effort in a way. It throws you back into yourself and reverses that natural human inclination to go out and out and out. So we view spirituality in the same, we view the spiritual search in the same way as somebody else might view the search for $1 million. It's essentially on the same plane. We think it's more enlightened because I'm looking for spiritual maturity and this other guy is looking for $1 million. But it's on the same level. And until you can realize that joy is not gotten in the same way that you get everything else, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. All you'll want is more. And so you're off to this retreat or that retreat, and and nothing wrong with any of it. You do that myself. But if you're going there with this idea that you're going to get something that you don't already have, all it's going to do is make you more thirsty.
Let's just look at the origins in a way of the spiritual search that are all personal, right? It's all built on a separate me, right? Because I mean, I've been studying some indigenous cultures and stuff and finding that the community is really more important than the individual. Somehow the oneness is already felt. And so then our way of finding spiritual is all built on my suffering and my advancement and my liberation and my, right? And so then, in a way, it's built on this kind of flaky foundation. I mean, it's supposed to lead you to some kind of a broader thing where there is no my, right? But it has to start out as a my. Is that right? Or, I mean, you know what I mean? Or should I say that some more?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Would that be a fundamental flaw in spiritual searching?
Ego has to go all the way with its search and become exhausted by it and essentially overplay its hand and be exposed for the illusion that it is. And at that point, then the self replaces ego, you could say, at the center. But not until ego has gone all the way with its game and become exhausted by it, through it. The whole thing has to just crash.
Yeah.
The whole egoic enterprise of finding spiritual maturity or enlightenment, the whole thing has got to come down to just a pile of debris.
How about that, Grace? Is that how it happened with you?
I would say I'm in transition. I have suffered enough, and my attention is more in what's here than in what I think about and what I think should be here and what I believe should be true. So I would say it's been a gentle.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's what I heard. I heard one time, like, the distance between what is and what I think should be is that distance is suffering,
Mm-hmm.
And
good.
so
That's beautiful.
Good way of putting it. And when you say you've suffered enough, that's another good way of putting it.
Suffered enough doesn't necessarily mean crash, right? Because that would certainly be enough if everything just kind of collapsed, clunk, and you go, oh, where am I?
Coming to the end of egoic striving, coming to the point of realizing that you can't get it.
Yeah.
I suppose in some people that can be an extremely dramatic thing. In other people, maybe just sense of futility. Okay.
Well, futility, or just seeing that doesn't help. I mean, because I'd say that's more with me. I'm not collapsing, but I think a couple of bricks are coming off here and there every day.
Yeah. Well, collapsing probably is a bit too dramatic way of putting it. It suggests that everybody's got to lose everything, and And that's obviously unnecessary.
Yeah. Okay, physically you could lose everything, like in a sickness or something, or like in a bankruptcy, or like in a, an auto crash where your whole family was in that one auto, or, a plane crash where your whole basketball team was up in there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That happens too, you lose it, the whole thing.
Yes.
But the other thing is that you could just lose, you realize that, hey, I never even had anything. These are all just my ideas, They're just my whole structure is just not even a belief. It's just like I agree with myself that I'm a professional, that I'm a physician, that I do these kind of work, and I have a specialty, and I got an office and wife and kids and this and that and the other, and you agree with yourself that this is all your structure, right? And then you can undo it in a jiffy, in a flash. Your wife divorces you, your kids grow up, and then you say, oh, hey, I never really had any of that stuff as real stuff. It was just my little agreement with myself. And then you can realize I can make any agreement with myself. And then you think, oh no, that's too scary. I don't want to make all those agreements, So then you say, well, if I say yes to some one little thing, and then I'll agree that that could be part of myself, and then tomorrow, another time, oh, I can go here, oh, I can go there. Hey, I'm in New Zealand. What the hell's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a beautiful discovery, that I'm not my structure. I'm not the story of grace. No. I'm not who everybody has defined me. I'm not who I have defined myself as. This form exists, but the story of this form is all made up. Yeah.
And then you can actually get to another place where you say this form exists and it's actually my ticket to ride. I kind of love this form, actually. And I'm going to really take care of it, because I can do so many things, and I can do them with ease, and I can do them with, extreme effort and blood, I can do them every way I want,
Been there, done that. I was into extreme sports. I was a rock climber, and lots of dangerous things for that sense of being present. If you're rock climbing, you need to be fully present.
Yeah, I don't know if you notice this on Eckhart Tolle's, the two of you, but what I think I notice a lot on the forums is that people kind of there's a very strong tendency to kind of mistake form for the mind-made self, okay? And I really think it's important to distinguish between those two things. I mean, yes, like you put it, Grace, here is a form, okay? This is a human body form, and like you said, Richard, it deserves to be taken care of. I mean, we don't have to despise form. There's no need to despise form. But then people assume that what you're talking about is what Eckhart calls the mind-made self or ego. And no, the form does not imply there's an ego inhabiting this form.
Usually the ego includes the form of the body, though, right? It includes it. And includes the thoughts and the feelings, too, like, okay, the pain body thing,
Yeah, the assumption is that the ego somehow or another inhabits this form, all right? And I guess I believe that it's the other way around. I think this form here, this physical form, inhabits, you could say, inhabits the larger self, right? And the larger self is who I am. I'm the witness to all form and the space within which all form lives and moves and has its being, you could say. All right? But I'm not referring to Tom there or a little me inside this body. I'm not referring to that when I say I. When I say I, I'm referring to the one universal self. And I believe that every human being, either consciously or unconsciously, and we're still in in a period of human spiritual development where 90% of all human beings, when they use that pronoun I, they're still unconsciously referring, or they're assuming that they're referring to a little self inside this, okay? Whereas I think that awakening or enlightenment or whatever you want to call this is the realization that when I use that pronoun I, all right, I'm referring to the one self. I'm not referring to Tom. Okay?
This
right?
is true whether you know it or not.
Whether you know it or not. Correct, Grace. I think you're right there. This is true whether you know it or not. I mean, I think you guys know what I'm saying there. I mean, sure, I mean, I use the pronoun I that's in situations, in numerous situations during the day where I know that my hearer is assuming that I'm playing the conventional game of Tom. When I go to the dentist and they say, "What's your name?" I say, "I am Tom." All right, that's a game we're playing, but it's not real. When you actually, all right, when you use that pronoun, you're not referring to Tom or Grace or Richard. You're referring to the one. And to come to, oh, all right, that's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's what awakening is. It's as simple as that. It's not some complex thing. It's not some mysterious thing. It's not some, continuously, kind of spaced out frame of mind. It's none of that stuff. It's just realization of who you are. That's all enlightenment is. But it makes all the difference in the world.
We all have thoughts, right? We can create thought patterns, and we can pull thoughts out of our memory, and we all have thoughts. And then with every package of thoughts, I think there's some kind of sensation. We're here, so it's something, it either gets us somewhere, makes an emotion, or it actually reminds us of a mood, like when we were incapacitated, or when we were joyous, or when we were... So then there's emotions, see? So we got thoughts, we got emotions, and then we got, of course, we're all doing actions, no matter what. If we're blinking our eyes, that's an action. So then, let's just say there's these three things, and in any one person, one might be more dominant than another. One person might be thinking. Another person is just feeling, wee, oh, ee. Another one is going to town, I gotta go here, take the kids there, I gotta go there, and then I gotta go here, oh, I'm so tired. And they live like that, right? And when those three are out of balance, usually they're out of balance, because usually we predominantly favor one of those and feel we're good at it. But somehow, like when emotions have no interpretive value there, they go up and down. We don't know how did I get here anyhow. It doesn't go anywhere. It just goes up and down. If we're always moving and we don't know where we're moving, we don't think about it, we don't really feel it. If we're always thinking, we could be doing the worst things and we're not thinking, oh, well, we're setting a cruise missile out and we're going to get the bad guys. Hey, we're going to get more good guys than we're going to get bad guys. Shouldn't we weigh that? No, we have no feeling about that, right? So when those three are out of balance, our life and the whole world actually is on an erroneous path, let's say, or some kind of a self-destructive path. And so then we're talking about being embodied, and we're also talking about understanding, right? And then we're saying out of those two things, something's going to come that's more balanced and better action, an action that's actually conserving our planet and sustainable too. But until those things are not in balance, then the actions are liable to go anywhere. And then, could that be a goal? I mean, is that too motivated for a spiritual seeker saying, oh, that's all illusion, why work in the illusion? Or, I mean, it is, in a way, it's malleable, so in a way it's not fixed like a fixed thing, like, okay, what doesn't move is attention, right? It's always on. And what moves is like everything in the world, and matter and stuff erodes and changes, but that's good, because I mean that's how we play games. I don't know, who wants to think about that?
Well, if you have thoughts, emotions, and do action, what's driving all that?
I don't know. Can you really say? I ask you. You tell me your take on it.
I would say the self, the animating force of
thoughts. But what makes the thoughts?
The self.
Conditioning. They always come up the same. If they didn't come up the same, why do they come? Your thoughts loop in one way, Tom's loop in another way, mine do in another, see? Because we have a different kind of like wake, a different trail, right? And our, you know, an interest. We have the, but you know, it's the same thing, because you could just say, well, why do we have that interest? And well, that's our wake, you know. We're interested in those things. And then...
Until we're not.
Right.
There comes a time when the self loses interest in those repetitive thought patterns, and they fall away.
Yeah. That's really good, you know, and it's cool, because then that's called growth and new things and, you know, new frontiers, and right? And then, you know, it must be growth, because we don't need those thoughts anymore, so we outgrew them, right? You could call it growth, I don't know.
Who is it that outgrows them?
Yeah, who is it? But you know, they don't whoever it is doesn't outgrow thoughts, emotions, and actions, because those three are always present somewhere, you know. But they might outgrow a few of them and say those old ones are goners.
Oh yeah, well, when the self awakens in this, or by and through this body-mind, or by and through that body-mind, those body minds continue to have thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
Right.
It's just that the self has awakened by and through that particular body mind in the time and place called Richard, or the time and place called Grace. There is no conflict there anymore. The self has realized itself there.
Yeah.
And and that realization, that coming together of self with self. Okay. Now, and here's the paradox. The mind will never resolve this, okay? Self comes together with self, though there never was a separation to begin with. I mean, that's non-duality. It cannot be explained.
Yeah.
But the point here is this, that when that happens, which isn't even a happening, okay? Nothing happens. This event happens, but nothing actually happened.
Yeah.
I mean, try to figure that paradox out. It's impossible, but that's non-duality. That's the essence.
Okay, let me say this before I totally forget it.
Let me just say
yeah, finish up. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say one more thing. That event slash non-event has enormous implications then for thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. You are going to see a shift there.
Right. Okay, now
of thoughts, emotions.
I'll go for that. Yeah, I'll go for that. And they're still there, right? So then, okay, you said you were mentioning a place that goes beyond conflict, right? Something I kind of took it that meant like at a certain point, you know, you just see the self sees the self, and then you arrive at a place where conflict has absolutely no interest, right? Something like that. Did I get that right a little bit?
Yeah, you mean all types of conflict?
Well, I don't know. Let me just go on it then. I don't know. I got it that at a certain point, conflict is doesn't arise anymore. Now I'm going to go and say to Grace, you know, because Grace shared and said that I got. First of all, she shared that I'm on the path or something like that, or I'm half cooked, or I'm feeling good, right? And but yet, she outgrew conflict through which for her was the conflict of searching, right? And she outgrew it only by choice, you know, not by awakening. She outgrew it little by little because she still claims she's on this trajectory, right? And so then I'd say the same with me, you know. I just realized, oh, conflict. I don't need anxiety because I can check in on anxiety level and I can know my anxiety, right? And I can choose. I can choose to, now lately I've been calling it the open space of good feeling. I can choose the open space of good, well, first of all, I can recognize the open space of good feeling immediately, right? It's not, especially when it's not here, right? Now I got it, right? And so, and then I just want to, and let's just say it's an experiment to stay that way, you know, and Grace, I think, is doing that experiment because she says those things that contract me, I don't choose them anymore. And so then that's just a conscious choice. I mean, am I kind of getting that right, Grace, or?
Yes, and the key statement there, in my opinion, is it's a conscious choice. Consciousness makes a choice. I, Grace, don't make the choice not to be anxious.
Oh, yeah? Well, who cares who makes a choice as long as it's made, right? I don't know. I mean, do you have to put a disclaimer on it? The choice got made, right? And anyhow, Grace was there. You know, some people say Grace was there, and some people say there's no Grace. Come on, get off it.
That is a conundrum there.
Yeah.
And the mind struggles to get in control of that, and it never will, because what we're referring to as a conscious choice, you could also refer to as an event that happened.
Yeah, so what? What's the difference?
There is no difference.
The only reason for me that you would say it's not a conscious choice was because you were thinking that if it was a conscious choice, there'd be anxiety there, because then I'd have to do it, you know, oh, I got to do it, I'm responsible for all this stuff. Right. But if you just already are saying, like, whenever the closed space of contraction comes, I'm going to choose the open space of good feeling, which is easy to do, because, you know, positive thought gives you an open space, a negative thought gives you a closed space, and you just watch and say, oh, that's a negative thought, you know, and you know, you can either take another take on the situation and say that there must be one that kind of like says, and so at least attack it sideways, or otherwise you could just throw it out and say, look, I'm not doing that today, that's tomorrow, you know, I'll do tomorrow anxiety, today I'm doing happiness.
Who's the I?
Yeah, who cares, you know, just stay open, you know, and then the I is, I mean, see, because like I wouldn't ask that question. I mean, why not? Because like it doesn't cause me anxiety. It doesn't cause me anxiety, and it doesn't get me out of my space, my open space of good feeling, whether there's an I or a not I, you know, and a not I doesn't help. Doesn't, you know, nothing helps because I'm already there. I don't need any help. And so I don't have to ask myself traditional questions.
Those questions are probably more apt to come up if you're not in such a spacious place.
I'm just teaching people how to be in a spacious place. It's just simply positive thoughts. It's like the basic Christianity, or I don't know what, you know, any religion is saying that for eons, you know, and we think, oh, it must be fake. I don't want to paste a positive thought on this real tense situation. And then you just say, Eckhart says it's the pain body, right? You're just loving that pain, love it, love it, love it.
It's not thought. It has nothing to do with positive or negative thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Well, try it with both of them then and see. You know, try it with, put on some negative thoughts and then see how great you feel, and then put on some positive thoughts and see how great you feel. You'll notice a difference, I believe.
You will. You will, absolutely. But,
so then why isn't it thought? Why do you have to deny it? Thought is there, you know. That's the easiest way to manage it. You can't really manage your feelings. You know, you can manage them with your thoughts, because a thought creates a feeling, for my 2 cents. I think that all of my feelings are created by thoughts or beliefs, you know, or underground thoughts or collective consciousness thoughts, or somehow we believe that, you know, okay, certain classes of people are, you know, drug addicts are second-class people, we believe, you know. if we do. You know, a lot of people do, let's say. And so then when I see one, I think, ooh, I'm getting out of here. I'm crossing the street.
Well, in my experience, whether I thought positive thoughts or negative thoughts or tried to manage my thoughts, it didn't result in what has resulted by simply noticing thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, and not attaching significance to them. That doesn't mean, I ignore thoughts that say, well, I need to take care of this or whatever, but...
So are you dismissing them?
Not necessarily, no. I just kind of watch them, and I may or may not respond to them.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the people, the three classes of people I'm saying. Of course, nobody has only feelings and nobody has only thoughts, but, they're dominant in one way or another. And I would say that I've noticed a lot of people that feel things and that really love satsang and love to go and feel the space and the teacher, and they love kind of meditations, and there's something here called the forum where people just do pranic healing or energy or aura combing or something, and you can really feel it, people love that. And but they say, too much thinking going on here. I'm confused. It makes me confused, right? In other words, they block to concepts. They block to them. And so then they dismiss those concepts and say, no, I don't go there. These guys are just talkers. They talk about, I'm a being. I'm not a doing. I'm a human being. I'm a feeler. So then they're out of balance, right? Because they go up and down, but they don't know how they got there. And then they just think, oh, God got me here. There's no doer. And they can make a good excuse of why they're not. Yeah, is that true?
Well, and I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is what you were saying or not, Grace. I'll leave that to your judgment call. But I have to say that realization is deeper than thoughts, emotions, and actions, all. And what happens at that level of the deep self, when it resolves the conflict between itself and itself, that's an event / non-event, like I said a few minutes ago. It has nothing necessarily to do with thoughts, emotions, or behaviors.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I totally agree, that realization would be the ground of thoughts, feelings. It's like where it unfolds in, right?
Mm-hmm. And it has implications for all of those things.
Yeah.
Thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if what you're referring to here, Richard, we could call possibly temperament. Maybe different styles, how people would describe this event, or how they would express it or share it, or whatever. There may be people who would want to think it through more, and others who would want to emphasize the emotional implications or the aspects, and others the social aspects or the behavioral aspects. And yeah, I think spirituality has accepted that there are different temperament types.
Social or behavioral, for me now, just to get it clear, is all about engagement and disengagement. It's not about being nice or anything like that. It's just about being part of the community and part of the world, or otherwise saying, no, I'm a separate place and I can live in a closet.
Yeah, but I think you make a good point, though, when you say that the weaker aspects of a person do tend to mature and develop. Yeah, you're right. I mean, all of us probably leave childhood with some aspects of ourselves, whether that be thinking or emotion, or the Jungian paradigm, the intuitive and the sensor and the feeler and the thinker and those things. I mean, but I think that if if we're going to be mature, I mean, what implications awakening has is that those weaker aspects of ourselves strengthen and come into a more dynamic balance with those strengths that were already there pre-enlightenment.
Yeah, okay, let's just say this, though. They strengthen because we're willing to take a look at them, but before we weren't willing to take a look at them. That's the only way they strengthen, because now we're here. And now we can say, well, I don't have to run from anything. Even my thoughts, when I used to think they were confusing, or even my emotions when I thought that they were impractical, or, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And so that might be the balance that you're talking about. Once again, speaking personally, I mean, I would call what we're talking about here maybe a higher level of integrity.
Okay. Explain that a little bit. Go a little deeper into that.
Well, awakening for me has, among many other things, what it has implied is that balance you're talking about. And my thoughts, emotions, and my behaviors coming together one with the other and all sort of flowing in the same direction.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know, for lack of a better term, I would just call that a higher level of integrity.
Well, beautiful, beautiful. That's a great pointing. I love it. That really sinks in.
And I'm not going to necessarily say that the person that I developed naturally as in my earlier days, with its strengths and weaknesses, is going to have those same patterns now, because the weaknesses have been, you could say, by the grace of God, these things have been developed. All right. And Jung talks a lot about that, how in the mature awakening personality, that which had been underdeveloped becomes developed. And balances, like if you were by nature a thinker, you're the feeling side of you is going to catch up, so to speak. It's going to balance it, and everything is going to just, you know, well, you use the word balance. I think that's great, you know, integrity, flowing all in the same direction.
Yeah.
But
alignment, then. Alignment is cool. Huh?
But there was no decider, you know, in here between the ears and behind the eyes that just decided that, oh, I'm just going to do this. It's a nice day. I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Okay. Not totally a decider like that, but a decider could say, I'm not going to mess around with anxiety anymore for a while.
Well, in my way of looking at it,
yeah, it works for me.
Well, sure, and whatever works, I would be the last person, I can tell you this, that would ever argue with somebody who says that what they're doing is working for them. You know, far be it from me. But I always, in my way of looking at spirituality, spiritual development, awakening, and the like, if you were to ask me in one word how to sum it up, I would have to say identity. Who the heck are you? If you know that the answer to that question, you don't need any further growth. You know, but
who the heck do you believe you are, right?
Who are you? You know. You would. That's kind of what you've been saying, Grace. I think, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I've been sort of picking up on here, and in your posts on the sites, for that matter. I've been picking up on that in you.
Mooji talks about how there's one Earth and there are billions of worlds, and we all inhabit our own worlds. And he talks about evolving beyond concepts. And I think that when we evolve beyond concepts, we lose our identity, the identity that we have held our entire lives.
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean, how does that work for you? Are you losing your identity? And I mean, does it feel funny, or does it feel like empowering?
Peaceful. Feels peaceful to me.
See, because like here I am, like I've been 3 months in Australia, and now I'm a month or more in New Zealand, and like my old structured life is kind of far away. And then, like, what should I do tomorrow, and where should I go live, right? I don't know. Who wants to take me in? You know, I mean...
Every day's a mystery.
It's a mystery, you know, and I'm not so sure I got a structure. So then who is it that's got a structure or that doesn't have a structure? I'm not sure about that either. And it's kind of been fun, you know, and I kind of grasp onto my video making and stuff like that, and that's my little mobile meet. And but really, I'm stepping pretty close to not having a structure and not having much of an identity, right? And then I can see that identity's useful. I don't know, you don't have to be wandering, like, you know, with a rucksack and or be homeless out in the streets. You can have a place to go and a job, and why not, you know? And so then I'm not so sure all that spiritual stuff that everybody says I'm yearning for is really what they want. When they get close to it, they'll go, yikes.
Yeah, right. That is very true.
It's in my experience, you can have a very ordinary, wonderful existence, more ordinary and wonderful than when it's all wrapped in identity.
Yeah. Ordinary seems to be a key to me, you know, ordinary, because like I want to do a class on mundaneness, you know, how great it is. Because everyone else wants to do a class on how to get a spiritual experience, right, and how you can really poof. I'd say no poofs allowed in this class.
I'll tell you what, on one level, ordinary can be very mundane, and it's beautiful.
It becomes transparent. It just becomes transparent, I think, you know, like it's just not even there, right? I mean, it's just like I think that whatever we're looking for, we've stepped over it for so many years, it must be awful subtle, right? Otherwise, if it was a big thing, we would have seen it already. And so then let's just go to the subtle and kind of just settle. We do that anyhow in meditation and stuff, be very still and very quiet.
Yeah, subtle, hidden, you know.
Yeah, not hidden in the sense that someone hid it, but just hidden in the sense that we're not paying any attention to those small moves. We like the big moves, you know, like even movies have special effects, right?
Right, right. And it's not just that we're consciously choosing not to. It's an incapacity, really. It's an inability to see the truth.
No, wait a minute. Like, I think nobody ever told us to look there, you know. And, you know, it's not... They said it's going to be a big deal, and we're always looking on the horizon for the big deals coming, and we'll spot them out there, you know. But really, it's right on our feet. We should be looking down here at the ants moving around or something like that, right?
It's closer than our own. Eckhart says it's so close you can't measure it. It's closer than your own breath. It's closer than your heartbeat. It is so close, we miss it.
Right, right.
We spend our entire lives looking out for it, and it's right here.
Well, it is us. You know, it is me. I mean, how can you get closer? There's a perfect identity between the seeker and the sought. Oh, when you've seen it, what more can you say but that, really? I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing.
So there's no contrast, right? In other words, because they just fit right over. It's just like a perfect imprint, right? And then we only could see contrasts, you know, when things are different, black and white, different colors, and we're always looking for put more contrast in our life, right, so that we could finally see it, you know. And in the world, too, we have to put more contrast, like good and evil have to get farther and farther apart, right, and think, oh, my God, now I understand what it means. Global pollution, I figured it out. It took me a long time, you know.
Well,
so that
contrast is what I was saying. Is that the only thing we can see is contrast? That's all that our perception falls on.
Yeah, and realization is pure 100% subjectivity. There is, if by contrast you're talking about being able to look at something in a sort of objective sort of way, yeah, I mean, we can spend many incarnations doing that. Like here, like Eckhart says, everybody is pointing here and there. There it is, there it is, there it is. You know, and then when we get a little bit more subtle about it, we say, oh, it's within, it's within, it's within, but we're still looking for something.
Yeah, well, that's why I was kind of objecting to when you said we don't have a capacity to do it. And then just now you said everybody's saying, looking out, oh, there it is, there it is, there it is. And then we're just believing them, you know, saying, oh, well, come on, show me. I'll go for it. I'm willing. And then we objectify everything. Well, how about this one? Let me just go on this one a sec, you know, because, okay, I'll just say it quick because I've said it before in other shows, but, okay. Oh, how deep should I go in this? I'll just go in the Buddhist part, you know. And they were saying, it's in the Wu Wei Wu or Wei Wu Wei. One of those that I read. And he started saying Buddha spoke in this language that's dead, right? And that it never was written. And then the only thing we know Buddhism from is the written words, and that was from China. And so that China, Buddha's followers went to China, and then when they got established, they started writing texts and stuff. And he says, okay, we know nothing from the original language, right? And what we know is from Chinese. Chinese has no nouns, virtually none. They're all verbs. It's all action-like. English has all nouns. In fact, every kind of word can have a noun version of it. So then English is always objectified, right? Everything is an object. And we're the subject. And that's just a separate, it's made by a people that are totally believing in separatism, you know. Everything can be a noun. So then all those translations are erroneous, you know, or misinterpreted or you know, and we don't really, we can't know that, right? So I don't know why I said that, but I think it was
interesting.
Yeah. So then we, you know, it's like not that we in a way we don't have the capacity. It's an incapacity, you know, because we don't see that way. Our conceptualization.
Blindness.
Yeah, it's a part of our blindness.
It's not. It's, in other words, it's not just an adjustment that we need to make here and there. You know, improve your self-esteem or get better at seeing the truth. It's an out and out, full and total inability to see the truth, until which time we are provided from within the capacity to see, until which time we're blind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great reason to pray, right? We could just pray to God, please deliver me this knowing, you know. And I know in English I'm not going to get it, so.
But that it's powerlessness is I think what I'm referring to here. The powerlessness of ego to capture, to get, to arrive at, to achieve whatever you want to refer, however you want to refer to it. It is unable to do it. That's what I meant by incapacity.
Right. No, I get it. Now I get it. No, before I wasn't getting it. Yeah, totally. So the powerlessness, let's just say it's actually awakening is an unknowing and a total curiosity, right? To see and experience and be there, you know, with it. And when the moment you say, I know something, you move on, say, what's next? Your mind does anyhow, right?
And, so and that's what I meant when I used the word hidden too. And I think you kind of maybe got a little doubt about whether that was a good way of putting it too, Richard. But hidden just means that the ego can't see it.
Yeah. That's
what I meant by the word hidden. It's just out of, I mean, it's kind of like peripheral vision. I mean, if I put my finger out in front and move it back and back and back and back, I can see it until it gets far enough back, and then I can't. There's no way I can see it. And just outside of peripheral vision, you could say, that is who we are.
I would also say that it's hidden from the self because the self has its attention directed elsewhere.
Right. The self chose that state of ignorance. If the self hadn't chosen that state of ignorance, we wouldn't have the universe. After all, the ego itself is that aspect of the self which is unconsciously identified with human body minds. That's what ego is. It's an aspect of the self. Nothing is other than the self. And so, what's the problem?
See, now, like, okay, I just go back to these, to my old favorite thing, you know. Because like you're making descriptions, and we're all making descriptions on our own, and we got 3 angles here that we're looking at, see. And I'm just noticing what's the value of these descriptions, and in one way we're saying, well, the self is not going to get it, and then we're saying English is not the right language, and blah, 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 you know, there's this and that and the other, and it's hidden, and it's going to be hidden, and ego wants it to be hidden. And then we can make all kinds of descriptions, and I don't know what some of Grace's were, you know, that, you know, you don't need that anymore. You don't need to seek anymore because, you know, and in a way, I think Grace is saying like she wants to stay open, right? So what I'm saying is like each one of these descriptions do have an effect, you know, some kind of an effect on us. Some of them make us positive and up and like, yeah, that's great. And then some of us make us, like resigned, like, oh, well, there's nothing to do. I can't, there's no doer anyhow. I think I'll just sit here. And so I'm just saying notice the effect and go for the ones that have a good effect, because none of them are really, we're just saying none of those descriptions really are it and never will be, right? And
right.
So,
beautiful.
Yeah, and so then just go for that effect, you know, that only use the descriptions that keep you open and kind of like, wow, this is cool, I want to get involved, you know, let me engage, and I'll call someone up and say, let's get together, you know, let's hold a group or do a, what do you call it, a video satsang with Eckhart, or I'll add some energy here or there, you know, and then those things, they involve us, and then and then from an involvement of people, you know, then we talk and say that he's not so bad after all. Maybe I should invite him out. I'll invite him over to lunch, and something comes out of it, right? And then life starts to unfold, and comes out, and there's lots of great things to do, and everybody's, you know, I mean, emotions are going through, and we're kind of seeing them in a good way, and we're processing them in a way. I guess we're saying, oh, I don't need that one anymore. Out you go. And it all comes from staying open and, you know, kind of like honoring community too, right? And saying community just means friendship. Honoring friendship. Just the forum. It's perfect. You know, honoring the forum. And, you know, you can see how the forum develops, because at first, anytime 2 people are a little bit different in their outlooks, you know, and one feels a little bit more awakened, he thinks, oh, I know something now. I better tell it. And that's just what we were saying. We don't know anything. Like the highest form of enlightenment is like not knowing, right? And so then it's kind of like honoring friendship and honoring kind of going out, reaching beyond where we normally would reach. I mean, I don't know if that's a stretch for a lot of people, but for me, it's just a part of my job. Never not here, I have to ask people to talk. So I have to go out and meet them and see if they might be interested. And so then that's throwing me out, you know. throwing me out of my shell and out of my normal safety zone and stuff. And so then that's what my suggestion is. That's how I would wrap it up, you know. I just call it the good, the open space of good feeling. You manage it with positive thoughts, or if you got a negative thought, at least don't move on it, you know. Don't move from anxiety, because then you just create more anxiety. Just move on open space, right?
Yeah.
That's my hint for the day. What do you say, Tom?
Yeah, it's what, you know, it's kind of like what Eckhart has said, whatever works. You know, I mean, what ultimate difference does it make, really? Go with where you're at, you know, what works. What the hell difference does it make? Right?
Well, that's really honoring everybody to be their own individual and to make their own discovery, and that's the only thing that really makes sense, because really we don't believe anyone anyhow, do we? We might parrot them for a while, but we're just waiting for that dynamite experience. But in other words, I'm almost saying, like, don't tell anyone anything, you know, just tell them stay open, and it'll be automatic.
Well, there's value to pointers. The pointer isn't the thing, of course. But if there weren't value to pointers, Eckhart couldn't sit in front of 5,000 people for 4 straight hours talking about these things, right?
Yeah, he seems to be pretty good at it.
yeah, right. You know, so yeah, it's kind of like an art in a way.
Yeah.
It's how do you describe that which can't be described? No.
See, I'm saying we all need that art, you know, because I mean, okay, we're saying more and more people are getting enlightened. We're saying so many things, you know, or awakening. Let's say there's this movement in the planet to consciousness, and all these kind of things we're saying. But I mean, and then we say, well, how's it going to work? Does everyone have to get enlightened? No, it'll start to switch. The 100th monkey, that's what they say. And then they just say, well, there's a critical mass, you know. Well, does it take 12 disciples, or does it take the 144, or does it take the 144,000, or where is it the balance? I mean, so all of us, in my way, we can be outgoing, and we can do our best to explain what we know, or what's hit us, you know. And so and then all of us could be little Eckharts, right? No, we don't have to be successful at it, but we can just give it a go.
Even Eckhart isn't Eckhart.
Yeah. Okay.
As we
Tell us, Grace. We're leaving you out.
I find it interesting that Eckhart does not do what he does in dialogue too often. He's inviting dialogue now a little more on the forum with the speakers he brings in, but the majority of his teachings are written and spoken and answering questions, and he does not interact a lot. He doesn't invite a lot of dialogue, and I see a lot of value in that.
In not having dialogue?
Yes.
Well, I'm the other way around, you know. If you want dialogue, come here. Eckhart doesn't. If you want dialogue, come on here. Why? Why do you see a value in that? Why do you see a value in that?
Because dialogue, the mind can really get attached to dialogue, to the thoughts that it wants to entertain and the beliefs that it wants to bring forth and justify and support. And
okay, we had a 3-way dialogue, you know. We had a 3-way dialogue. Are we attached? How about you guys out there? Are you attached? I don't think they're attached. I'm not attached. I don't know. How did it work today?
I think it worked beautifully.
I agree. I thought it worked very, very well.
Yeah. See, because in dialogue is also ownership, you know, if you're a part of it, or if you can feel a part of it. You say someone resonates with me, someone else says, no, he talks too much, I'll resonate with Tom, he just knows more. No, I like Grace. So someone's going to resonate better with one or two, you know, one of the 3 of us, right? And then through what you say, that one person says, they're going to have an ownership. right? Now, why would somebody just say, I'm going to write? Okay, well, they got a good publisher. Because they wouldn't write if they didn't have a good publisher and they didn't think it would go anywhere. They're not writing to put on their shelves. And why would they only give talks? Because they can sell them better, probably. I don't know what. You know, they're still in the hands of the commercial people. But, you know, why wouldn't I talk? I mean, I'll talk to anyone at any time. Actually, people have noticed that and called it a defect.
Yeah. Well, I don't, you know, I don't know, but there's obviously value to both the monologue and dialogue. But I mean, if we say, okay, well, there are teachers out there, all right, and Eckhart is a teacher. Actually, Eckhart is like the rest of us, the self, but the self is expressing itself in an extraordinarily powerful way through the form conventionally known as Eckhart. I mean, if that's true, and I believe it is, then yeah, I can understand why he would talk in kind of monologue fashion. I mean, that's what the teacher does, right? I mean, the term teacher implies that you have something to teach, right?
I like that when you say that's what the teacher does, see, because like here we are three together. Like, I'm not supposed to be smarter than you guys. You guys have done it more than me on the forum, you know, and I just like to ask people dumb questions, which is cool. So then we have no expectation, right? We have no, and we're not going to listen to Richard's dialogue. We're not going to listen to Tom's or Grace's either, you know. I mean monologue. And we're only going to listen to our dialogues, right? And so then we have no expectations. Okay, around Eckhart, there's an expectation. Give me. I want. Let's milk him, you know. And then we don't know. We're not taking ownership, you know. And we're saying, well, maybe we'll get a feeling out of it or something, and we'll go with it.
But
sure, it works. It works for a lot of people, and it works. You know, it works too. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. But Eckhart himself, you know, and naturally, I would feel cheated if I went to an Eckhart presentation, and there were like 3 people up there talking among themselves. Okay, if I want to go hear Eckhart, I want to go hear Eckhart, and that's the place for the monologue.
Not only wanna, you know, not only wanna, you paid.
Yeah, you pay.
See, nobody pays to come to Never Not Here, and so then we can do whatever we want, right?
Yeah, but Eckhart himself, I've heard him say that anybody who's really looking just to kind of become a follower or something very quickly loses interest in him, because he's not out to gain followers as such. And so he's there, and what they quickly come to realize, or at least it seems to me that this happens with the most successful teachers, you come very quickly to realize that you're not looking for a guru. You're looking for yourself, and the self is being very extraordinarily powerful by and through Eckhart and other teachers too. Muji, Adyashanti, I mean, we could name a whole...
Oh yeah, but there's lots of them all over the world. We don't have to just speak of the Western ones.
Right, of course.
They're hugely, and then they're all really effective, and a lot of the Indian guys, you know, they like to really, more than Christians give to the poor, you know, they really set up programs to go out into the villages and do amazing things, right?
Yeah. But the point being, my point being anyway, that, I mean, I think Eckhart would admit that, you know, there's nothing special about Eckhart.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to knock anybody, you know. I don't know. Let's see what Grace says. She might have a take on this. I'm knocking this guy too much, right?
Who are you knocking? I didn't notice you were knocking anyone.
All teachers, you know. I only like dialoguers.
You like the dialogue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I just noticed that Eckhart and Isira, I don't know how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, Isira.
And Gangaji and Muji and Adyashanti and any number of spiritual teachers often offer satsang. They talk, they answer a few questions, and that's it. There's not a lot of dialogue. Now, whether I were to sit down in person with one of them, I imagine you could have dialogue, but I personally feel like pointers are very valuable, but I've gotten a lot more by not dialoguing with others and not dialoguing even within my own mind. The dialogue has taken me away from the peace of a quiet mind.
Yeah. Well, we owe you special thanks then for breaking your taboo. Coming on here, right?
It's not a taboo.
Well, your preference or whatever, you know. I mean, but you know, you didn't get. Are you peaceful?
Yes.
And so we didn't break it that bad.
I'm happy too.
I love it. Let's keep it that way, huh, everybody? Yeah.
It's wonderful what you do, Richard.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it more and more, I'll tell you. I love these triples, I'll tell you. So nice. So nice to really be in this balance, you know. It's really, really beautiful.
Got two real characters on this time, didn't you?
Yeah, we got some characters going here. So I guess we'll start to say goodbye, huh?
Thanks to you and Rena for putting this together. I know Rena's in the background helping there. So thank you both.
She certainly is. Yeah. Yeah,
this has been a pleasure, Rena and Richard. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. Grace, it's a pleasure meeting you like this, and it's
Likewise.
been a fantastic conversation, I think.
Yeah. Let's say something, you know, let's reach out to the Eckhart Tolle Forum and all your friends that you've talked to for years and tell them how much you love them.
Very much so. They
yeah.
Fabulous group. Love all of them.
Yeah. If we didn't have a group, we wouldn't be able to express ourselves among people who have an interest in this sort of thing.
Right.
It wasn't that long ago. I mean, let's remember. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago when if you were interested in these sorts of things, I mean, you were viewed kind of as you know,
suspect.
Eccentric, or you know, a mystic, or some of us are considered eccentrics, but you know, like you're a Jack Kerouac kind of guy. You're on the road, and I'm
definitely on the road. I have made it. It was a long time, Jack.
Just way outside the mainstream, and you know, you're a beat, or you're a hippie, but it's not that way anymore. Eckhart is right. I mean, in the last, I would say, I don't know, well, the last 40, 45 years, there's just been an extraordinary explosion. Of course, the opposite is also happening. The explosion in awakening is causing a reaction on the dark side of the self, and we're seeing both kind of
rise. We don't even know that's a chicken and egg, right? Maybe we're all awakening because we're scared of all that darkness, right?
Negative and positive are arising mutually.
Yeah.
And
I hope that's not a rule of thumb, you know. I hope it's gonna.
Well, the planet's
ease
future
up, you know.
depends on consciousness winning over catastrophe.
Yeah, let's let it happen. Let's let that happen, all of us. And thanks to everybody on the forum, for Eckhart Tolle Forum, for listening to this, and for viewing your friends, and for coming on here someday in the future maybe, and they'll give you a testimony that it was relatively painless.
Everybody on the forum should consider, you know, coming on here if you ask them, and there's plenty on there who would, I'm sure, Richard, if you and Rena ask them.
Yeah. Well, that'll be our pleasure. We'll just love it.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Richard.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Same here. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And thanks to everybody again. And look forward to some more of these three-way talks. So, bye for now.